Okay, hi everybody. My name is Lauren Caldwell and I'm the board president of the Missoula Urban Demonstration Project, or MUD. Hopefully all of you are familiar with MUD. And before we get started with other things, I'd just like to acknowledge that it's a really snowy day out there, and thank you to everybody for coming. And our facilitator, unfortunately, was coming from Helena, and she is stuck still on I-90 on her way. So she's going to come in midway, and it might be, you know, it'll be a little bit jumbled, but we still want to thank you for being here and honor that by going ahead and having the feedback session and letting you know where we are at MUD. So before I get going on my spiel about MUD and where we are, I'd love to start with going around and just saying who you are and if you've been involved in the previous charrettes and what brought you here to this third charrette.
You can have it around if you want.
Yeah, and he said you don't have to hold it straight to your mouth.
I have a cough, but I'm Becca Titus, and I'm just a MUD member, and I borrow things from the tool library and go to some of the events and classes. I heard about I was at the second charrette, and then I got an email to let me know about this one. I'm on a mailing list or some sort, and so I'm excited.
Great, thank you, Becca. Thanks for coming before too. Sure.
Okay. Hi, I'm Michael Dean. I moved here from Bozeman in July. I'm quite interested in this kind of development. I've been a student of sustainability since the mid-70s, and I've been implementing it wherever I can. And in 2000, I re-entered school. I entered School of Architecture at MSU and made the competitive cut the next year into the professional program and got 3 years through a 5-year master's program.
Mike, what's your last name again?
Dean, D-E-A-N.
My name's Kaylin Miner. I'm a MUD board member, and I am very passionate about sustainability issues all the way around. And I started getting involved with MUD back in the day. Lauren and I went to college together, so it's definitely a great. There's a great core group of people in Missoula that I love working with on these issues. So thanks for having me, and hope to talk with you all later.
I'm Ann Quirk, and I'm the AmeriCorps Vista at MUD this year. I just started recently. So I'm really excited to be a part of MUD and this process. So Bill, can you hear us? Okay.
So we've got on the phone, and we may have lost him, he's kind of been going in and out, but is
Hey, Bill.
Bill McDormand, who is the founder of MUD. This is our 30th anniversary this year at MUD, which is a huge deal, and he was the person who signed our Articles of Incorporation. So it's pretty exciting to have him, and he's wanting to take part in some of the things that this year are going on.
So we might come back to him if you can get it.
Okay, I'm Laura Churchman. I'm also on the board, and I work primarily on promotion, outreach, marketing, and events with the board.
Hi, I'm Lindsay All, and I'm also on the board. I had not been to the first or second charrette, so I'm excited to see how the process will go and what we come up with today. So,
My name is Paul Wheaton. I'm a MUD member. I'm a certified master gardener, a permaculture instructor, and I have an eco building design that is of course not one of the ones that's really a fit for here, but I can wax on about things like that. We don't have the person on the phone?
I think she's getting
Okay.
in right now. And Tim, do you want to introduce yourself as well?
I think I've been connected already. Well, my name is Tim Skufka, and I'm on the board as well. I've been involved in MUD since '99 and on the board since 2001 or 2. I'm excited to move MUD to a new direction and hope to enlighten everybody of where we've been the last couple of years and where we're headed in some really exciting directions. Do you want to?
Yeah, I'll give a little intro. just to remind everybody, and again, please bear with us because we were expecting to have a facilitator, so just bear with us here. So MUD, the mission of MUD is to create a replicable model of urban sustainable living through education, demonstration, and celebration in the Missoula community. And so we break that apart into education, demonstration, and celebration. And our educational components are our workshop series and our youth education program, which are largely headed up by Ann, who's our Vista, and our education committee. And then the demonstration component is really about the site, which we're going to talk about today. We own these 3 lots just west of here on Phillips Street on the north side, and have for the past 30 years. This is a lot of what's made MUD for the past 30 years. And then the other component of our demonstration site are 2 of our programs, which are the tool library, which people might be familiar with, which for over, I think, 12 years now has provided Missoulians tools. And so now it has close to 1,000 tools. And we'll get to talking a little bit about the future of the tool library here in a second. The truck share has 2 trucks, and hopefully you're fairly familiar with that program as well. It was awarded the Missoula in Motion award when it launched a few years ago, and one of our trucks is outside right now. So Ann brought that over today. So
The chairs.
and those are 2 of the primary reasons that people join and become a part of MUD, and then they learn about all the rest of what we do. And then the celebration component are 2 of our major events: the Earth Day celebration, downtown Earth Day celebration in the spring. That's going to be on Sunday, April 17th this year. It's going to be huge. It's usually attracts about 2,000 to 3,000 people and a lot of local businesses and nonprofits. And we're really excited about where that's going to go this year. It's our 5th year of putting the Earth Day celebration on downtown. And then a little bit more subdued celebration in the fall is our garden party on site, and that's where we really bring MUD members together and people who may not know about MUD yet to the site, and it's just a great bash for MUD and to support what we do. And then in between those, just so everybody knows, every month during the summer we have what we call MUD mingles on site, where people come together and it's a potluck and kind of share ideas about what they're doing and what they want to do but don't know enough about, and can kind of help each other towards this goal of living more sustainably. So that's the whole gist of what we do at MUD. And today we're going to be really focusing on the demonstration site. But before we do, I just want to provide a little bit of information on, recently the board went through a strategic planning this fall. And one of the major decisions we made, which hopefully you've heard about and you'll continue to hear about, is we're planning to move the tool library and the truck share to a more visible and accessible location. That would allow, and we're looking at sites right now, and we're gonna be launching a capital campaign in the next month. But moving those services means that more people are gonna be able to access them. If you've been to the site before, you know that it's at the dead end of 2 roads. It's kind of hard to get to, and parking is a limitation, and all of these things. And we really want to make sure that as many people can utilize those programs as possible. So we're not going to focus on the move of the tool library and truck share, but I will say that over on that wall is the preliminary site plan for that, which was drawn up by Tim. And if you have other thoughts or questions about the tool library and truck share move, we're more than open to those. And you can get in touch with the MUD office, you can get in touch with Tim as chair of the redevelopment committee, or any of us on the board or staff. But I want to let you know about that, because one of the key reasons we decided to move those programs is to really free up the site to be a demonstration of sustainable living, a residential demonstration of sustainable living. Those programs, as they thankfully became more and more and more popular, were just consuming the site. And so if we move them off the site, then we have the opportunity to really do a full-scale demonstration of sustainability on the site, which I think, and Bill can correct me if I'm wrong, was really the whole point from the beginning for 30 years. So we're getting, and that's what we're going to talk about today, is how to revamp the site to make it really this demonstration of sustainability. So this is the third of 3 charrettes, and the first charrette, which, I don't know, Kay was there, I think. So it may just be Kay and Tim and I were there, but it was great because we gathered together neighbors and community members and affiliate organizations like Home Resource and members to say, okay, big idea, what do you see as a demonstration of sustainability at MUD? What would you do if you had these 3 lots? What can you dream of, And so we have these great pictures, which I guess we did bring today, that are just people drawing all kinds of stuff about what they would see if money wasn't a limitation, if it didn't matter whether you were on or off the grid, if it didn't matter, like they just drew all of this kind of incredible stuff. And we led from that, we took all of the information from that and we gave it to the MSU's Community Design Center. And it's an architectural program, and when the students get into their final year of the architectural program, they take on these community projects, and they look for real ones that are happening in the community. And they have, in our case, 3 students created 3 different designs based on people's input about what it could look like at MUD. So those of you that were at the second charrette, we talked about each of those designs, and they're up here along the bottom here. We talked about each of those designs and what do you like or not like about this, and it went everywhere from silos, like old grain silos, to storage containers, to, they went all over the map, and they also were pretty free still about which buildings are we gonna keep, how are we going to reuse some of the older structures at MUD, it was really great, and it was a good next step for us. And then from that, which I'll let Tim talk more about, we went into the next phase, which is getting down to really the specifics of what this redevelopment is going to look like. So based on the pros and cons of these, working with MMW, which Tim will talk about, the architecture firm here in town, to say, okay, now let's get to another level of getting closer and closer to a final design. And that's why you guys are here today, is hopefully to continue to give us, so that we can let you know where we are, and you can continue to give us feedback about kind of when it gets down to the nitty-gritty of what's it going to look like for people living there, what's it going to look like for people visiting there, how is it going to stay relevant and useful to the community, which is the whole goal. And it's why we've had this public process as part of this. Instead of just the board or the redevelopment committee deciding all of this, we really wanted to get public input. So with that, I just want to thank everyone again. I can't do that enough because MUD runs on volunteers. All of our board is volunteers, our staff right now is mostly volunteers, and it's a huge deal. And for you to come out on a day like this and take part is tremendous for us. So I'll pass it off to Tim, and I'm going to put this right over here on the table. And apparently we lost Bill, but he'll get to see the video, so he can hold it.
He did want me to mention how proud he is of all of us. Keeping MUD going.
Yeah, I should say Bill got in touch after our year-end appeal this year, where we mentioned him as signing the articles of incorporation. He got in touch, and he lives in Arizona now, and he said, I'm just so amazed with how far the organization's come and how long it's been in this community. There are a few organizations that can boast that long of a life in a community. And right now, MUD's just flourishing. Our programs, our membership, and it's a pretty exciting time. And so this project's just one piece of that, but it's nice to get that feedback.
Yeah. Last week, I had the opportunity to take invited architects and designers from Missoula on a tour of MUD's existing, with the intent of gathering, and we gathered last Wednesday, to have kind of an informal gathering of design ideas, and we threw it all on paper. And but I wanted to show everybody how I introduced the project to these architects. This is, I've distributed a site plan of what MUD is now. And on that, there's various sustainable items. And on the far right, you'll see 14 items that depict what we do at MUD. All these very innovative, important urban concepts. But as I brought these architects on site, we looked at it and said, this, and this, and this are cool, but the blatant items, this building and this building, which when you look at the site, it's 619 and 629, are not following sustainability nearly as much as we want them to. It's the building envelope, the mechanical systems, they're all failing. And especially 619, it's failing in the structure, is falling apart. The foundation is made of timber and stone that's fallen apart. So I've identified the site as those two buildings and all those little items in the middle that are happening. So we've divided the project into two elements. 619, we're going to deconstruct and mine for the materials that exist. And then 629, we're going to follow some sustainability projects or design criteria kind of in the level of LEED, remodel, renovation. And that's if you want to pass that down. So there's the program for the 629. The building, after we tear and deconstruct and reuse the materials on the 619 Phillips, we're going to follow the design guidelines of the Living Building Institute. That's a program that's it's been equated like it's LEED on steroids. It's LEED times 10. It's architecture as architecture should really be. Basically what it's doing is that structure has to generate all its power, it has to collect all its water and recycle all its water, and all the materials have to be locally found, and the interior environment has to be completely sustainable and friendly. This concept was extremely interesting to MUD because it's what we've expounded on and what we follow, and all of a sudden there's a system that does this. And it's even more important from a couple of the current events that are happening around Missoula recently. Mountain Water just sold to a multinational corporation, so our water system is less secure. A major byway, scenic byway, is becoming a corridor for the petroleum industry. I sit on the planning board and regularly see subdivisions taking up and eating up our farmlands in the periphery of town. And so it's these items that make this living building structure more and more important. And that last one, the farmland, the way we're addressing it in the living building is that what we are creating here is kind of an intentional community that is focused on what it takes to live sustainably today. And what we want to do is design for the inevitability of what's happening with peak oil, and we want to be ahead of the game. We want to design today for what's going to happen tomorrow. The programming for the living building is intense. It is no fooling around. I mean, the fact that this building has to generate all its power is not an easy task. The fact that the building and the site has to collect and recycle all its water in a kind of a semi-arid climate. This is the Living Building Institute is described in what are called petals. There's 7 petals, and they're all, actually I should have one so I can. and each petal, well, the reason they use petal is the Living Building Institute is likened to a flower that's, again, generates all its energy, collects all of the water, and is kind to all its surroundings. So it's all of that in a building. Those petals are then subdivided into 20 imperatives. And those imperatives, for example, on the site, there's a limits to growth. So we're reusing and utilizing an already subdivided lot. Urban agriculture, we're going to expand on the urban agriculture that Mud is kind of known for and does well. Excuse me. This urban agriculture is quite interesting, is that the level that Mud wants to take urban agriculture and in that effect on the peripheral farmlands, what our intent is that these 5 to 10 people that are living here are going to all be intimately involved in a farm, a nearby farm, with the intent that the fruits of their labors will be brought back to the site, canned, frozen, or dried, and stored, with the intent that 100% of their labors will be, 100% of their food needs will be attained by their labors. The importance of this is that it will be clear just how much each of us needs in terms of farmland. And then the importance of that, it'll be described of each person needs X amount of square footage or acreage to sustain themselves. So that's that urban-rural farm connection that we want to demonstrate. I'll just, the programming overview that we have, this just describes each of the elements that I just kind of went over. So again, 619 will be deconstructed and turned into the living building. And 629, the whole time that I've been involved with Mud, there's been this conflict between those that want to keep Mud in the kind of grassroots level and those that want to take Mud to the 21st century. What we've done here is we're going to address both of those. The deconstructed will be the living building, and the 629 will be a remodel at the level of of any of the neighbors that can take the workshops that we hold there and utilize those tasks, those elements of sustainability, and use in their own home. So that was all presented to the architects, and what we did is separated into 3 groups. So, you know, it's really interesting to get a bunch of architects together and see where their minds go. But real briefly, I'll just kind of describe where those went and the elements that I thought were really interesting. This one, they kept the pattern of the neighborhood, which is single family, single family, single family, all the way down the block. And so they didn't change that pattern, but they did make a connection so that the intent of this communal part, the communal element that I haven't mentioned yet, is that all those residents will be housed in this intentional community, and each unit will have a kitchenette of some sort, but it would be encouraged to use the communal kitchen for the major dining and major cooking activities of the whole community. So the parts that are interesting here is a sense of entry of that communal area. So this would be the communal part with the housing on both sides. What's really kind of unique in here is that they've identified a back remote area. They've thought, well, if all this community is all together, they may want a separate kind of a yoga or kind of where the whole idea is that we want to attract families, individuals, elderly, but all of that together, they want, we should have something apart. So that was what I took from this group one and thought, yeah, let's do that. Group two, they also thought that entrance, that center should be important, and maintained the center greenhouse as an element. But they perforated that greenhouse as a way to enter from the street and get into the communal area back here. And of course, they all have greenhouse, south-facing, passive solar, and then utilize the rest of it for the urban agriculture. Group three thought, okay, that greenhouse, the straw bale is kind of in the way we think it should form a central courtyard. As you're coming off the street with the units on the left and right, but focused front and central would be, again, that commons ground. So, and then they took the front streetscape and turned it into an urban orchard. Yes, thank you. There's a long ways to go from this stage to getting the nuts and bolts of bathroom in connection to living room, in connection to kitchenette, in connection to the community room. And each of the 7 architects and designers are extremely interested in the project because it means so much to sustainable architecture that they want to take it and go the next step. But I thought it would be important to identify where we are now, and we are happy to inform everybody that Becky has made it all the way from Helena. So I'm going to relieve you from my presentation.
I just want to mention a couple of things just to really emphasize them. Thank you, Tim, for doing all of that. Tim's chair of our redevelopment committee, and the redevelopment committee's charge is to take on the move of the tool library and truck share to a more visible, accessible location, and the revamp of the demonstration site. So they've got a lot on their slate, and they're really kind of the visionary piece of what MUD does right now. It's pretty exciting. And we also, non-board members are welcome to be a part of our board committees. So if this is something that you're interested in and you want to be part of the committee, or you just want to provide input, just know that we're always open to that. A couple of things that I really want to stress are just reiterating what Tim said, that the 619 Phillips place that's going to be deconstructed and mined for materials, and then 629, which we're going to be redoing. The whole point of that was really to respond to a lot of the comments we heard at the first charrette and at the second charrette that said, you know, at 629 you've got a good building, you've got a useful building there, and for people, most people, they're not going to tear down their whole house. So we needed to give them something that said, what can I go home and apply to my house to make it better, and then to provide on the other side of the site, this is what you could do if you were unlimited in kind of in what you could attain. And it's going to come with challenges in making those things possible. There's nothing like it in Missoula. If we went to the level of living building standards, there's nothing like it. And so it's really saying this one is for everybody that owns a home in Missoula and wants to live more sustainably. And this is for you, for those people who want to see what's possible. And then the other thing I want to mention is that we're going to get into kind of what you see or what you would like to see there, and our hope and why the MUD board decided to, when we decided to move these two programs, we decided not to just sell the site or move away from the north side entirely, was because we still saw that there was a need for a public demonstration. You know, there have been things in Missoula where Homeward tries to build, you know, using green principles, or there are plenty of contractors that build for private individuals and use green, you know, technology and green principles. And you know, there was Make My Home Green, right, on over off of Brooks, where a house was built, but then it becomes closed off. At some point, all of these become purchased and closed off to the public to come and see them and take part in them and learn about them and apply them to their own homes and their own lives. So our purpose at MUD is to be as open as possible and to be a constant educational demonstration there. So I just want you to keep that in mind as you think about these, as you talk to other people about them, as we get feedback on them. The whole point is not just so that people who live at MUD can live sustainably, but so that the whole community can benefit from this resource. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Becky Brandborg, who facilitated our strategic planning as a board, has been doing a great job, has compiled all the feedback we got on the second charrette and in a bunch of surveys we did around that. And so she's got it, I'm sure, flowing through her mind, and she's going to kind of facilitate the group here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lauren. Thank you for putting up with my lateness. And I thought what we would do is absolutely first ask if you have any questions about anything that Tim and Lauren have talked about. Okay. Well, you certainly can just jump in with them anytime you want. And then I thought we would also, why don't we look at these closely around one table and hear about any more depth that you want to hear about these three potential designs, and tell us what you appreciate about them and what maybe you don't appreciate about them, or what could be even better. Would that make sense? So that the board gets deep feedback about these. And
are we looking at 3 designs, or are we looking at 6 designs?
well, these were a first iteration, and then the feedback was sought during the design charrette number 2, and that's what I transcribed. So these are stage 2 thinking, and these, not quite as fancy yet, but are the stage 3. Am I right?
You're right.
Okay.
And the thought here is that what we would do is go from, you know, we would talk about each of these a little bit together and get some feedback about what you like and don't like, so we can take that back to MMW, and then we would talk a little bit about what are the most important things for you, or the most important thing for you to see as you come to MUD or as you're a visitor to MUD.
And you'll get food for thought on that question by looking at these. Yes?
And I have a general sense, just looking at the most recent designs, it's more about how the space is used. It's more about site design, whereas the ones from the second level got a little bit more structural looking. So I mean, is that what we're looking for? That more overall use of the site right now, rather than like do we use a silo or do we use a box car?
Right.
And which level are we at?
Right, maybe we start with these one at a time all around one table so we can look down and see them really closely, and then,
Let me point out why we felt it was necessary to leave this and go beyond that. Mostly because of our last strategic planning session, we started looking at what this was doing to the site, and we told these students there's 3 designs, 3 different students, 3 different solutions, but it started affecting the site because we told them that the tool library needs to be bigger and better, and we needed these many people living in there. After all that was said and done, we had no more urban agriculture. So we said, oops, let's start over. And we stepped back, we did our strategic planning, we analyzed all the input that we had from our first planning sessions, and then went here.
and you told them enough about what's going on with the new site for the tool library and the truck show.
Yes,
Great.
and that's over there.
Beautiful,
Yeah.
beautiful. All right, and we'll look at that one too.
Yeah, we
Go right ahead.
relieved the design of the tool library and truck share programming to give us a little bit more leeway to do what MUD wants to do at
Right.
the site.
Your primary purpose, which is the
Right.
demonstration part.
Exactly.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I have 1 or 2 comments. First one, on the orientation of the building within the site. Because you're concerned about ultimate efficiency, you really want an east-west orientation, east-west axis.
Right.
And given the narrowness of the site, I'm thinking you want to pull your main building back further from the street.
Okay, so why don't we look at
And
each
have-
one with that in mind?
And have the streetscape, your front buildings be more closely to scale of what exists, and let your primary building be pulled back and better respond to the environment. Or the
Okay, so
To react to that one, again, when we gave the assignment to the students, there was 2 other buildings that we thought were sacred, which were the straw bale greenhouse
Right.
and the greenhouse in the back. And so each of these designs used those because we said, we don't want to move those. And
Explain it. Because the straw bale building was the first straw bale.
Yes, I understand.
In Missoula, and
yeah, and so with the hope that we could maximize the amount of agriculture that we can still do, one of the students took that and they developed the entire west side of and when this building was removed, they left that as agriculture. So that's exactly opposite of what you're explaining. It's going north-south, and the best solar gain is if we went east-west. And so in daylighting as well. So that's what the whole idea is, that if we brought all the development at the street, that allows everything to the south to maximize on the sun, and then like you said, we can get that solar.
Yeah, and I'm not saying you make more voluminous buildings oriented east-west all the way
just
to the
hear it.
back.
That's what
You're
we're
saying
just
back,
acknowledge.
so it's not dominating the streetscape.
Right.
That's my suggestion.
Okay, all right, that's why we're here. So if you would be so kind, let's come all over here around this circle so we can be close together and look at this and hear each other really well. Go right ahead.
As I remember at the last charrette, can't really say that word.
You just did.
What were the number of occupants we were trying to get in these 3 lot?
Well, there was a lot of feedback about that, and there was a pretty big range from 2 to 5, and you guys are now recommending
5 units. The existing house that we want to renovate is a single-family home at this point, but we want to demonstrate that a single-family home can either be that or be subdivided top and bottom to become 2 units. The idea, we're an urban project. Density is important to utilize the facilities and the infrastructure that exist in town.
So you're thinking 5 units and maybe like 5 to 10 individuals?
Individuals, yeah.
And how do you react to that? What do you think? Is that right? Is that high, low?
It's 3 lots. So if a family lived on each of those lots in a single family dwelling, I could see there being, I don't know what the average family is, I like to say 5. I don't know if that's true. A 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom house. So I would say 12 to 15 people, occupants, would be a good number to demonstrate the crowdedness.
And
crowded conditions, it works.
Great, okay. And tell people what you had in mind in terms of each home unit and what it would kind of include.
Again, the 619 or 629 that it's existing as a single family is going to be renovated into 2 units that can be a flex program that they can be 2 units or it can be a single family 2-bedroom, 2-bath, 1 family with, like you said, 5 people, or 2 separate units with a couple in each one. The idea is that each unit would be would have a living space, a bathroom, and a sleeping space. Then the living space would include a kitchenette of sorts, but of course add a limited kitchen so that it would be encouraged to utilize the common community kitchen.
Which is right there, I think. Right.
What's your footprint on that existing building, the 629?
The
Square footage? Yeah.
781.
I'm sorry?
781, is that right?
Of
781? Okay.
Yeah, yep.
And the other one's pretty similar to 721. And they both have similar, they've got lofts basically right now, but not full second stories on either.
So we would be extending, kind of like you did with your house, you took like a loft and you actually made it a real, so the height would go up maybe a little bit?
Yeah, and then like Tim's talking about some way for them to be both, to be utilized separately or together.
Okay.
Which,
Depending on the population of tenants.
Right.
If they were separate, how many square feet would there be in 1 unit?
About 700,
Okay.
right? And about 1,500 as a single.
Would this be a good time I'd like to say something to that.
Okay.
If that's okay, but.
Absolutely, this is the
It's kind
time.
of crazy, and maybe this would be better for Charrette 1, and here we are at number 3, so.
No, that's all right. We
No.
still want your thoughts on,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, we're not taking the whole thing backwards because we've got drafts first, in this new configuration. But that's why we invited you to hear what you think.
Okay. I spent a year on a board in Seattle called Density Research, and it had to do with urban density. And the solutions that seemed to be where this particular group was going for was to find solutions where you could get 20 people living under one roof, so that way the number of square feet per person would be much smaller, like 250 to 300 square feet per person. And but then the things that the people would have access to would be far more luxurious. So then you would have a decent sized room that would be your private space, and then you would have this amazing living room, an amazing kitchen,
Common.
amazing
Commons. Right.
common. And then on top of that, when you start talking about folks that may be a bit younger than the average population, the idea of having 2 to even 4 people sharing one room isn't unheard of. and then it's like when you start talking about the concept of rent in the Missoula area, and it's like, oh, your rent for this room would be $400 per month. But if you share it with somebody, then it's not $200 a month, it's $250 for each of you. So then if there's more people, then there's also more wear and tear and stuff. And it's all worked out. On the other hand, you have improved your urban density.
Yeah.
You've gotten more people to fit into a smaller space. Now, of course, there's the issues that come with every intentional community. How do people get along in a space like this? Now, as you were showing some of these, a thought popped into my head. I've visited dozens, I don't know, 50 or so intentional communities. And there was one that I visited that just popped into my head with some of the things you were talking about. And it was a barn that had been renovated into a living space for 9 people. And it had an enormous dining room, an enormous kitchen, all this enormousness going on, and little crazy rooms all along the edges of this rather significant barn. And whereas when I visit a lot of intentional communities, I usually go fishing for like, how is it that you don't get along? Where are the problems? Where is the pain? Where, conflict is rampant in intentional communities. This intentional community had existed at the point that I came to interview. I was interviewing their founder as the founder was exiting to start a new career in another state. What was the thing that brought peace to this community? It was the beauty of the building. Now they had 9 people living in this space, and so their number of square feet per person was really low, really good. They got along really well, and they felt that what really brought them together and brought peace to the community was the overall beauty of the building, which was shaped like a barn. And where would a barn fit better in Missoula than at Mud? All right, so I think I've rocked the boat enough now.
Well, and some of those, I hear a lot of things you're saying, I hear being able to be incorporated. I don't think that necessarily throws us back to square one.
Because the design element could still be.
Even the external materials and look, except for the fact that, like, we're not going to tear down 6.9. But this whole, we have all this space to work with, and we don't yet know what it's going to look like on the outside. Now we're kind of transitioning to what is it going to be like on the inside, and we are talking about, a common space, and we are talking about, trying to up. I think if we were talking about, if you're talking about 1,500 square feet and 5-person family, so then it'd be like 500.
People.
But I think there is a good question of how can we push that limit, and especially, if this is supposed to be kind of like your house, so people can go in and not be intimidated out of, going towards some of this stuff, then this one does have the possibility of pushing. It's pushing other envelopes already. It may have the opportunity to push those kind of size envelopes as well. And so anyway, I think your input is fine at this stage.
There's a balance that we're playing with. Not only we want to fit in with the fabric of the neighborhood. We can go 45 feet because we're in an industrial zone, but there are only single-family homes there. Popping up a 45-foot structure and being the most ideal and perfect density that we want to demonstrate is not going to fly very well with the neighbors. So we want to.
That's the balance.
We're playing with that. That came out significantly in the last 2 charrettes. Like, don't mess with our parking. Don't mess with. This is what our neighborhood is.
At the last charrette, we had almost every, and those of you that were there, remember, we had a table of almost every neighbor, which was great. And I think some of them were planning to come today, but unfortunately weren't able to. But yeah, it's a big concern to them that, like, it doesn't just seem like a monstrosity amongst their homes. And for us too, I think when you talk about, again, this kind of making these ideas really amenable to people, you want it to not seem intimidating, but I think there's a balance there.
And then also another element that we're stressing is that we're hoping that 100% of their food needs are going to be self-determined here. We put 12, 15, 20 people there, which could easily be done, but that stresses that level of sustainability, that if there's 5 people, we can accomplish a lot of the food right there on site. If there's 20 people, we need a bigger farm. So there's that balance as well.
I think you could, on this piece of land, you could easily feed 10 people. for, you know, and generally when I talk about sustainability and things of that nature, I usually shoot for 90% as opposed to 100%.
Well, you know,
because
right.
people want their coffee and their salt and they want, you know, certain herbs and things
Yep.
like that. So
We got to shoot for the top first. See what happens.
Okay. Well,
But that's a good, I mean, that's good feedback
That's
too, as
true.
far as how we talk about this and how, because you're right, I mean, and those kinds of things, I mean, I've done a lot of local food stuff, can seem like insurmountable to the person that's not yet at 4%, you know?
right. That's exactly it. So where if you say 90%, that seems more achievable. So then you might be more likely to hit 70, 80%. But if you say 100%, you might be ending up at 20 or 30% because it's like, yeah, what?
I can't do it.
You know, I just want to go back to so that one of the things, the reason we really tried to maintain the gardens and stuff is because we heard at these other charrettes that people really valued that about mud. If you've been there, you know, you get to kind of enter into, once you get past the buildings, it opens up and there are gardens and there, you know, and it's the garden party. I mean, it'd be interesting to have a garden party if it was just buildings. But, you know, I don't know if people have feedback on that element of having urban gardens there. And we talked about rooftop gardens before at the charrettes as well, and I don't know where
But the
that's-
rooftop, there's another balance there. The living building, again, needs to, as much as possible, generate all its power. So there's a balance of how much roof you can use for photovoltaics versus garden. How much can you use for, and then I know photovoltaics and water collection work together.
Yeah.
But green roof, especially in a climate like this, not much can happen on a rooftop.
And I would echo that, you know, it seems like, you know, green roof, yes, but like food producing roof tends to be really hard because you're, you know, trying to get good soil quality on something that's not good soil, you know, it's drainage.
I think more in terms of food production, we're going to make further advances in the greenhouse with aquaculture and aquaponics, and do those things, especially when the idea with a living building, you can inject the structure one time with the amount of water, and then that reserve has to keep being used. So how that gets used, filtered, recycled, and then put back in can utilize that interior food production for part of the filtering.
So should we let the group look at this one and give us their thoughts? And we'll do this with each one of them so that whatever the board decides is based on your wisdom on the subject. You know, what do you like about this one, and tell us what you don't like too.
You okay? Do you want to start?
Oh, I was going to try and see if I could sneak in two more things based on what we just talked about, but maybe that would be taking too much time. Oh, you're running out of time already.
Throw them out there.
One is the idea of annualized thermal inertia, which a guy in Spokane refers to as passive annual geosolar. And then there's a guy, John Hayden, who used to live in Missoula, who came up with something which he called passive annual heat storage. So basically, he ended up with a house that didn't need any heat in the wintertime in Missoula. And they've repeated it in the Spokane area several times. And in Japan, they have a different word, they call it an umbrella, like an underground umbrella. And basically the idea is that you keep a bunch of soil around the house dry, so that and then you have a pipe. So we'll say you have a metal roof, then instead of trying to do photovoltaics, which of course, I mean, the electricity here is pretty cheap. So photovoltaics is kind of hard to get to work out. But heat is something that we really need. And then what they would do is that they'd have a metal roof. The heat in the summertime that would get to be like 140 under that roof. They would then pump that underground. And then the house would be heated all winter long at no expense. So I mean, like,
Basically, that's
no energy use, no
this
nothing
greenhouse
burn.
right there now is exactly what you're saying. Is
Okay.
doing those. There's there are chambers underground that take the heat from the attic
Okay.
and pump it down, and like you said, it pushes the heat deeper and deeper that radiates.
That's something you
Then-
have an existing
It's
structure.
existing right now, does that.
Okay. Which structure is it?
That's the greenhouse
Where
in
the
the
tool
back,
library
where the
is.
tool library is. Yeah,
I'll go take some video of that soon.
yeah.
The other thing is that for the structure that you're about to build, one of the ideas that I've heard of, and I've heard some people have implemented it, but I haven't been able to get confirmation, is the idea that the interior walls could be moved. So that as the needs of the people who occupy the building change, rooms could become bigger or smaller and things of that nature. I don't know if it's a 2-floor structure, but it does require that the height of the ceiling be consistent and identical.
And you guys are thinking along those very same lines, aren't you?
Yeah, the difficulty, and I brought this up when I put it out in front of the architects, is that codes are an issue. When you've got a unit, that unit has to have a certain fire rating in comparison to the adjoining unit. When you have that flex space that wants to take over another area that you need now but you didn't before, then that fire rated envelope gets messed up, and we haven't figured that out yet.
And we actually, this is one of the things we have talked about before, is that in this concept of a living building, I think you said in Seattle, right, they had to relax, the city had to decide that they were on board with this and relax some of the regulations and some of the codes in order to allow this to happen. And if MUD goes for something like that, obviously we're going to need support from community, and we're going to need people to say, you know, this can happen and it should happen here.
It's
and
a
it should
good
be allowed to be
exception.
this,
Yeah.
exception.
And what were you
Yeah.
going to say?
Well, there's plenty of precedent for that kind of thing. Rob Quigley, an architect in San Diego, has probably built 400 single occupancy rooms, designed and built in various projects. And he's gone down to 220 square feet for one discrete living unit. Now, what this means is you don't get a door in the bathroom. It sits behind the entry door. The tub is along the wall. The bed is next along. And then you come down the other side. You've got a seating area, a little kitchenette, tiny kitchenette, just a couple burners and a closet. But you're getting into essentially the size of a single car garage. You have a complete discrete living unit. It's very cheap, very safe. But they had to have cooperation both, I think, from HUD, because there are certain constraints on a minimum size to a bedroom. Okay? A minimum.
It had to have a closet, and
It had a little tiny closet, but I mean, you know, there are all these different constraints, and so it involved the cooperation of both the city and HUD.
That's good.
But it's achievable. It's achievable.
And what was his last name, you said?
Rob Quigley. Yeah, he built his first one, I think, in 82, 91. He lectured about him when he came to MSU in, I think, 2001. Quite successful. The city bought in on a lot of the issues there, relaxing parking requirements. They found out that didn't quite work. I mean, the assumption was people living in one tiny space may not have a car, may rely on public transit. But they got all kinds of variances to code and other requirements.
So you're encouraging MUD to look at
Missoula
that.
does have
And I think
a similar PUD. Do you want to talk about
yeah, the planned unit development, and that's probably what MUD would do.
Right.
It takes the entire 3-lot
Right.
parcel and treats it as one.
Exactly.
that? And you can
like
say that there are
even-
people that are going to bike instead of driving, that our demographics going to be
Right.
different and get.
Yeah, and you can get variances.
Yeah.
This location we're in now, the Gold Dust, it was a PUD, and they have way lower parking requirements than the zoning requires.
Yeah.
Because of that. You know, we're on a bus line, we're walking distance, and we're a low-income community, so.
Now, your point about the firewall safety issue, distinguishing the units, is well taken. And I don't think you want to even try to work around that. Unless maybe you had your adaptable space have its own firewall assembly
As well.
so
right?
that it can be accessed from either unit, be attributed to either unit.
Yeah.
So that could work. There's another way to reconfigure living spaces, and Dan Rockhill, he teaches at the School of Architecture in Kansas City. He brings in IKEA-made sort of wall partition closet assemblies. And so it's not a permanent wall, but it's movable. They can change the configuration once the house is up and running. And that gives you a flexibility of arranging your space without having a permanent partition to deal with.
That's awesome.
And then there's some other issues about construction methodology, but that's
So before we move on to looking
Yeah.
at one of these, what else do you guys want MUD to consider?
I've got one more, as if I haven't bombarded.
No, you're fine.
One of the things that I think is really important is to try and bring on materials that are free and on site as much as possible. I know you guys have already said some things about that, but then Ben Law has his new book out about roundwood building. And at the same time, you have all kinds of forestry type things going on in the city. I know I was just talking to Mark Vandermeer, and he was saying like most of the wood they get is from city lots. But it seems like why not be able to come up with a structure that can be built roundwood style using wood that was going to be discarded from city lots. Like, oh, I got to take down the streets and smash into my house, and then they cut it down, and then they just cart it on over to mud, and then we build a lovely house out of it.
Probably the most onerous part of following the living building is the material selection. I went to a presentation of a living building project, and it was just a single classroom in Seattle, and the rigmarole that they had to go through just to get a SIPS panel that had the polystyrene that didn't have its structural insulated panel.
For electricity?
It's a structural unit.
Oh, okay.
And it's kind of a sandwich. You have wood, foam, and wood, and those can be walls or roof members. There's a list called the red list in the living building of very specific materials that are not allowed. PVC is not allowed. HC, the refrigeration.
Specific refrigeration.
Exactly.
Gases.
Yep. So it's very strict, and so I think the way around it is exactly what you're saying. It's like identify what's here. We have timber. We have river rock. We have straw. We have leather. Those four things, we can build a structure out of it. And if we go from simple instead of trying to do it complex, we're way ahead of the game. Straw is cool. It's been used, and we've used it there. Why not keep it simple? Yeah, one more source.
And Home Resource, for those that don't know, came out of mud, was born out of mud, and we've got a strong relationship with them. And when we talk about deconstructing the 619 unit, they, of course, have a deconstruction business and have already agreed to help out with that.
Yep.
Just for my personal, and it's not. I liked the idea on one of them that they were talking about the orchard in the front because I think it gives that idea of a gateway to what this really is, because you walk around long streets and you see trees, in front of homes, but it's rare that you're going to see an orchard in front of a home.
But to get from that, I think you're saying number 3 there, that's very specific trees to what's existing. There's an incredible cottonwood tree that probably needs to come down, but there's ideal lumber there. So we could take that down, make some wood, some flooring out of it, and then it needs to. The front porch of this is made out of cottonwood, milled by Mark Vandermeer. Cottonwood, he said cottonwood is one of the hardest. Once it's milled and done and down, It's a really, really good material. So there's yes.
Easy to dry.
Yep.
Good in what sense? Because as I understand from materials tables, cottonwood's really weak structurally.
I thought the same thing. But you
I
go to
believe it
that,
is.
you go to that patio, you can't
Well,
get
but
a
no,
nail
it's
in
just-
that stuff.
It may be hard, it may resist a nail, but it may not have much structural capacity.
Yeah, but flooring,
Yeah, flooring
Exactly.
is one use,
Maybe let you
but I
go.
mean, say to use it in another
a
application.
fur, right?
Yeah, I don't
Or a
framing.
timber,
Yeah.
Beams
no.
or anything, no,
Right.
no. I've heard of,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
And as far as orchard goes, the permaculture stuff in me wants to just bump that up a notch to food forest. Orchard implies monocrop,
Oh,
so that's all.
No, I think there's so much potential for the
Hugelculture?
culture to wind a little ribbon of that in there and some tree. I mean, we've got extremely a huge a variety that we could do back there.
Okay.
I would make a general comment, and I hate to even say it, but I kind of don't like the straw bale, the office.
I will second that.
And I can understand
tell-
the historical significance that
Yeah,
it
so
might.
just tell us why.
Okay, I don't think it's very attractive, and I don't think it's really shows the beauty of straw bale. And I think straw bale's, come a long way in the last 20, 40, whatever years. And
It's about 16 years old, isn't it?
Probably.
I just
yeah.
feel like if there is a straw bale structure on the property, it should show what straw bale could be.
It
Yeah,
should
it'd
what?
be beautiful. It should show
Oh,
the
okay.
potential of straw bale. It kind of bumps me out sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, the one guy one of the architects has said, have you dug into these walls to really see, is it working? And that's a perfect place to, it's like,
That could be a great experiment.
absolutely, see if it's really working. Yeah.
One of my professors at MSU did not like the concept of straw bale houses, and he mentioned problems with mice and stuff like that, living within them. And then there's another consideration in that I don't think straw bale construction, straw bales in themselves are structural components. You still need a framework.
The timbers.
A
Yeah.
timber frame. And so then you're into the issue of big pieces of timber as opposed to small sticks to frame something.
yeah, it's more, isn't it more sense of insulation than it is?
Insulation and
It's an
soundproofing.
infill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I will
Not even very
say,
good insulation.
It's not. Well, you have
Yeah,
that
yeah,
much and
you're
you
giving
get as
up so
good
much.
as you can get out of a wall like this.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
I mean, it's a good point though, and I agree that we've struggled with that building, and there's a desire to retain some of the, but that can be even retained with a piece of it. Like when you go to a museum and you say, this is a part of the original, whatever.
Well,
and
With
we're talking
behind a piece of
about-
glass.
Yeah, and we're talking about the possibility on, the tool library and truck share, the next site, that the main mud office there would be a newer, like better technology straw bale building over there, which we haven't finalized that yet either, but yeah, okay.
And I just wanted to weigh in on the straw bale. I think in its current location, it does not encourage people to access the site, and that's kind of my biggest thing with it. It's not that I don't like, I think that it could be improved in numerous ways, but most importantly, as in design 3, I'm not trying to jump, but everything's pushed back, and that's what I feel like I would love to see. And then one more thing on this site, or on this, we were talking about that living space with multiple people. Like I consider myself somebody who would jump at the chance to live on site at Mud. But my biggest concern is just having that real privacy. Like I can share a kitchen, I can share a bath, but I need a private
Absolutely.
room. That's just such a big thing. Like I could share a house with 5 people, like 629, but I would need my little 14 by 14, and not even right next to each other though.
This would be 14 by 14.
I just picked it out. Or 10 by 10, whatever.
You gotta be working on a 10 by 10.
Okay, 10. But what I'm trying to say is, I don't necessarily wouldn't if I a very high density situation, I wouldn't want my room to be here, my roommate's room to be here. Maybe like my room here, their room on this side. Just kind of like
Yeah.
around the corner. That's just one thing. I just don't want to like hear my roommate slamming their door in the middle of the night.
Yeah, I think it's a great point because we have to provide some balance between like, if we build it, they're going to fill it kind of an idea, and like being really realistic about what people's needs are and what will inspire people. Because I think part of tensions can run high when like you're aiming for a certain demographic, and sure you get 20 people and they're the same demographic. But what's been nice is at times at Mud where we've had a family
variety,
living there,
yeah.
and a young person living there, maybe an older person living there, and it's nice to have that diversity. And I think Kay's right that there's got to be some balance point, because I know there are other developments in town where they built stuff presuming that there's a want or a need for this, or that people are going to fill it, and then it just doesn't happen.
Well, and you guys have a really good housing needs study.
In Missoula?
Yes, that's only like less than a year old.
The action plan?
Well, I don't know.
Or the action plan was based on it?
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. And so
I have
that tells you what demographic of space is needed in terms of family size.
That's great. I mean, because I think about NMCDC, the North Missoula Community Development Corporation. We live in the Burn Street Commons. My boyfriend and I do, and they built a lot of units that were intentionally designed to be ADA accessible,
Right.
because they presumed that there was a community there that was looking for housing, and it's been hard to fill those. And they've also been a deterrent, and I can say when we went and looked at them, a deterrent for those of us that didn't need those accommodations, some of the stuff that was there. And so
Because it's more expensive, or it just doesn't look right?
No, because like there wasn't cabinetry under things so that wheelchairs could be there, and there wasn't, in the bathroom, there were different things were structured differently than we would have.
Right.
And so we thought, oh, well, if we bought this, okay, we need to change X, Y, and Z off the bat. So, but it's just an example of really being thoughtful about not just what would I want if I lived there, but like what do people really need or want in Missoula housing right now? Because I know that at least in
You've got the science. It's in print.
Yeah, it's
and
hard. We're not going to fulfill any niche here. 5 units. So I think if we even looked at the study, we need this percentage in Missoula. Well, we can put 1 here, and then this percentage of this housing. Well, we can put another one of those here.
Yeah.
But we're not going to fulfill anything.
Right.
Well, it's being a piece of the puzzle, though. It's letting it guide us versus thinking that we're going to answer all the problems.
Because if we're really looking, if the need was 2-story, 2 bathroom, or 2 bedroom, 2 bathrooms, well, I don't know. We're not going to do that.
Right.
If it set the pace for, like, let's say that this unit here was one that was 1 kitchen and 6 bedrooms that could be built as a single family unit. Then, if you use the ideas that we heard about for the movable walls, then some people might be able to get the privacy that they need and be able to get a room that's only $250 a month to rent, but it's a very narrow, small room. Somebody else who might have a family, they might have a couple of toddlers and they're sharing a room with their toddler, would have a larger room. And then as the needs for the future change, like if we embrace that we cannot predict the future, that our crystal ball sucks, then we can start to move the walls around as needed in the future. But then if it's a single family unit, maybe it gets past some of the fire code issues that we're concerned about. Because it's a single family unit. Then you're talking about just moving walls on one side of the house where you're not adding a bathroom or a kitchen or anything like that. You're just, some rooms become a little smaller and some rooms become a little larger.
Yeah. I'd like to reinforce her comment about privacy issues and add that as a requirement in here, that the spaces be built to a higher level of sound control.
That's what I was going to suggest. There must be some kind of sound barriers that could be put into the walls, whether they're movable walls or permanent walls or any walls.
It's quite achievable. It just takes some planning and
attention to detail.
That's great. I don't know if that's in any of the programs.
I don't think so.
That's a great point.
It's probably not in here, but yeah, think about that. I mean, you're going to want to go beyond what they do with a motel.
Yeah.
Okay. And even a new motel.
No argument there.
But yeah, because this is part of what makes living in such close proximity bearable.
Sure.
You have that timeout,
Gosh darn,
that
sorry.
sanctuary,
All
where
this
you
time
don't
I'm trying to
have
think of it.
other people's lives intruding on yours.
That's part of my biggest thing, and I think what we were hoping this Charrette would lead towards is more, what is it gonna feel like and look like to live there? What's it gonna feel like and look like to visit there? And I think, you know, when we talk about the front entrance, as Kate was talking about, the straw bale right now where it's built, it's sort of a barrier, you know, when you try to enter the site. And what's cool is when you get past it, then the site really opens up. What I see about like this number 3 design, which I'd have to look at a lot more closely, is that it has an open field at the beginning, but there's still this like next layer where you go back and then it's really open, or it's really, and I like, for me, the aesthetic matters a ton. And I think that that's what you were saying too about this barn that people said was beautiful and that helped them live there, is that to have it be, and when people, over the years that I've been in Mud, people say that there's this sort of just, this great feeling about being in Mud, right? You get in there and it just feels good. Now, I remember the first time I visited, and that's, I don't want to lose that in reaching all of the like technology standards and going for broke on, you know, on
Well,
sustainability.
and
I
that-
don't want to lose the sense of like,
Yeah, and that's the balance in every physical design, is melding the two, without a doubt. And that's why you do conversations like this one.
I just have one quick thing to also say, that quiet community space, like that could even be like, we've talked about a public, like a library that's available to the public. That could be incorporated in that space, but I think we need to have that space. I've never even thought
quiet
about that
space.
before. We need that.
Yeah.
That centering, that's just like, for me, that's the best part. I mean, this is a, no offense, but okay design, but that aspect of it, or that element, money, I mean, that is it. That's like, we need that.
Yeah.
So anyway, enough about that.
Now, this one, in terms of the straw bale, what they did was penetrated it and put, I think it was a completely open corridor with bike racks and recycling. So it still maintained that. There's an issue with one of the elements that they wanted in this one to be sure that if there's 2 units here and 3 units here in the communal section here, that they didn't want to go outside to get to the main dining room. So there was a connection from unit to unit. It was all interconnected. That one is 3 separate buildings. So you do, you know, in the middle of winter, you have to go outside and then get back into another. You can't wear your slippers to the dining room.
We could have a nice glass atrium walkway.
There you go.
Oh, we're getting all the passive solar. Sorry. Everybody just crams for that one. Yeah. That's where the meditation space should be, in that area. That's where people are going to be anyway. No, but then it'd be beautiful because you could, if we did it right, that greenhouse as part of the house. Yeah, that would be great.
I think, yeah, I mean, I don't want us to get too held up on
Where's my lease?
like keeping the straw bale to the point where
It's
it somehow inhibits
forcing,
the design.
because that's what happened down here. We forced the students to do something that just wasn't working. So
And you heard it.
That's why.
Were any of you here when they built that?
No.
I was here when they built that.
Yeah.
And here's how it was. It was like, hey, guess what we made? Look at this, look at what we made.
Yeah.
It is straw bale. I mean, how cool is that?
Yeah.
So I think it was kind of made in a weekend on a whim. So even though it was the first straw bale thing
Permanent straw bale,
in
yeah.
Missoula, I think that it was always intended to be.
Well,
That's-
what we should do is, I mean, I just think about this from like where the PR standpoint is, like if we kept a piece of it, and whether it was in
bench.
wherever it
That's what I
was,
was saying. Make it into a
Yeah,
bench.
A gathering space.
or and then also
Dedicated.
you have like, I think it would be great to have like the original permit framed and that be somewhere,
Yeah,
you know, so
that
that you
sounds
have these pieces of the history without the history holding us down.
And giving yourself the flexibility to do what you really know is the most important
is
stuff.
working.
The straw bale thing didn't have a permit, did it?
Yeah, it did.
Straw bale
did?
2.0.
Apparently, it's
Yeah.
first permitted straw bale.
First permanent straw bale in Missoula.
Wow.
So yeah, that'll.
Oh.
Uh-huh.
Sure, it wouldn't be permanent now.
Somehow I didn't get the vibe that there was any permit. Maybe that came later or something.
Maybe.
Retro.
Walt Redfield helped with it, who's a contractor and does, so I don't
You know,
know.
Walt, he was in charge of it.
No, that was a long
I'm sure
time
there were a lot of
ago. I
volunteers,
was
too.
teaching workshops at Mud back then, and it was like I stopped by regularly for different things.
And then all of a sudden
And-
there was a straw bale.
And then it's like, hey, you should come by next week and we're gonna do this greenhouse. We're gonna make it with straw
So you
bales.
have a YouTube video of it.
Oh, no, I don't think I even had one of the film cameras then.
I'd like to just make a point about, because I think we've talked some about.
Is it a question?
Do you
Supposed to be
want-
asking the question.
Oh, yeah, I thought we were participating too.
Oh, okay.
I guess, yeah, because I think this is, I mean, for me, and it gets us at the next phase, which is, we've been talking about what it would be like to live there, but again, this is a public demonstration, so how do people access it? How do people from the community come and take part in it? We've talked about open, once a week, it's totally, all the houses are open, so people can walk through it, or, how does it maintain that?
Lost Valley has a struggle with that.
What does?
There's an intentional community outside of Eugene, Oregon called Lost Valley. It's where that movie star went and did her permaculture certification. Anyway, they've got like 80 acres, and the thing that they had is they had a whole bunch of people that were leaving because of the train station effect. Too many people coming and sharing a table with them because they had a central dining room, which is a wonderful, beautiful dining room. But it's like they kind of got, at first it was awesome to sit down with people that were like-minded and share a meal, and then people would be coming in for workshops, they'd be there for a few days or a week or something. But then after a while, you're just kind of like, I don't want to meet another person as long as I live. I've met them all that I want to meet. I'm done.
I have a quick idea on that, and this is kind of going along with my atrium in my head that I've created. It's like this. So here's the south, and here's the street, the north part. You've got this, buildings, you've got the atrium. But wherever these residences are attached, there's a door. And that door locks. For privacy, for safety, I mean, I would honestly, I just think that would be a great, and that main area is that part that's always open. Library is always there. Public kitchens are always there. But kind of like we do now, it's like, nope, it's 10 o'clock. Bye. I don't know, that's what I'd say. Okay.
You've mentioned intentional community many times, and also a few other code words that smack of co-housing. So is that the intent? Is that what's going on here? So who's opting in? Maybe they should be the ones making the decisions, you see?
And I don't understand necessarily the distinction between co-housing or.
Intentional housing, co-housing's the same.
Well, the ones that I'm familiar with, because I lived in Boulder, Denver area, and I've been to about 5 or 6 of them there. One of them in the planning process. And this is a group of people who have been recruited through publicity, through networking, to come together and decide on the parameters and actually design the place from scratch.
This is not, you cannot buy into this.
Okay. You're strictly as a renter?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And in our strategic plan, we said there'd also be a site, like a director, someone who's there, who gets free rent, who helps make sure that the whole thing kind of flows. But yeah, so if that's the distinction, that's what I was wondering, if the distinction is like, you're purchasing a piece of this.
Yeah, and that's
like the
in
Eco
co-housing.
Village, the Sundog Eco Village or something, that's not.
Right, it's not.
Okay.
Yeah, and
But it
And
still
even
falls
so, it's a
within
good
the world of
point.
intentional community. Intentional community includes rental or equity.
I visualize a huge percentage of the people that are living here will be environmental studies students. That they're digging this concept that we're sharing the space, we are farming and storing and freezing and drying, that whole direct connection is, and ideally, we'd have a class or a program that maybe be a 2-year program where get credit for living here and you pay to be there, but it's going to be a laboratory or a study to really see what it takes to live in the city and provide 80 or 90% of your food, whatever it is.
No,
I wait long enough to get sick.
to Kay's point, well, I think that there again, there's a balance when you talk about it being public and still having that privacy. And that's long been an issue at MUD. It's why renters have turned over. It's why, and especially with the tool library there's such use of that facility, and people don't know that, like, if it's not open, it's not okay to just knock on people's doors, until you get open, or it's not, and we really have struggled with, like, signage and how to, like, direct people and make sure that they know what the hours are and things like that. But that's going to be a problem going forward with it being a public place. And so I really think it's important to somehow establish, what I'm hearing is there's boundaries and parameters to that, to say that there are certain days that it is open. And
Like
then other
maybe
days
2 days a year. 2 days a year to say, today's the day you get to come in,
Open house.
check it out, we're gonna talk about how we live here.
That's a great
And the
question.
rest of the time, it's our private home, and the 8 people who live under this one roof, we've become kind of like a family.
So there's probably a best practice from these other sites that says it's a limited number of days. Is that what
That's
you're?
interesting though, because I think like once a month, because I think someone who wants to make changes to their house needs to be able to see it when they want to make those changes.
I would think that the people who live there, where it is their home, they're gonna have friends coming over all the time. Hey, come check out where I live. They're gonna get little personal tours. But then there's all those people that don't know anybody in the house and want to see the insides. Once in the spring and once in the fall is probably great, maybe once in the summer, but then during the winter, who wants to come in anyway?
One of the criteria of fulfilling a living building, if you actually fulfill all the petals and get there, they also want it to be visible and they want to show it off so that others know. So I have to look deeper into of what they expect for that.
Right.
And part of what's interesting about that is so much can be done online now too. And as we're building these places, we're gonna have workshops throughout. But then like on top of that, I think it could be, I imagine there could be a virtual tour that helps you see all of these elements.
Oh, that's good.
So that you can access it. 'Cause for me, I worry that someone's gonna say, oh, I really want to see what this composting toilet's all about. And then I don't want them to necessarily wait for a few months or like try to work their way in with some of the people so they can get in and see it. I want them to be able to see.
Here, take this DVD.
Or flash drive.
Yeah, right.
We've got a USB port out here at the curb, and you just plug your drive in and download everything.
YouTube it from your house.
If you're on a bicycle.
The video is right on the webpage.
Maybe the library can have that.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
Just view it there or rent it or something.
and or like a blog, of someone that lives there, or people, everybody that lives there contributes to, that says like, here are the frustrations we deal with in these structures, and here are the things you should avoid if you're going to do these structures, and here are the things that are great.
This really helps.
Perfect.
At Lost Valley, the
That's great.
solution was to separate, the private residence stuff from the public stuff. So the public stuff could happen right next door. Then the private people could go out and participate in that when they felt like it, which in the beginning was all the time, and later was not so much. And but in the meantime, the public doesn't come in to their kitchen, to their dining room, to their bathroom, and so then it's kind of like you've got this. Well, as long as there's this line, that made things way better.
That stresses why this evolution for the site is very important, because on Mud Mingos, we have to use one of the bathrooms of someone that lives there, to be the bathroom for the Mud Mingo.
Right.
It's like, it's just not right.
Even that's got rolled up.
Yeah.
I want to throw in real quick. Yes. Maybe the layout, so the residences have a separate path. It's kind of like park ranger houses, maybe, that it's kind of separated, you kind of know that it's separated, and maybe it's in pathways, maybe it's a gate. And then I think a public restroom is really important too, so people feel they can come there and participate, take in the garden and not feel like they're imposing on somebody's household, so that could be important.
Right.
Part of the
And
plan,
when
right?
you mentioned bike parking, I think it's important to anticipate enough room for trailers on bicycles in hopes that people will be getting tools and using the new mode of
Yeah.
transportation. So that you don't have this cluster of bikes, maybe lengthwise along the fence is an option, and try to just anticipate some people doing. And then that would be maybe something in the future would be to complement the trucks or replace the trucks would be trailer rentals. So
Yes.
you can come get the lawnmower already strapped to a trailer waiting to go.
We do,
That would
the
be
tool
really
library
neat.
rents, or used to have a couple trailers that they rent.
We did.
Before I forget, have you talked to
Thanks,
MRA
Craig.
about ideas for a place for the tool library and stuff?
Yes. Well, we have a site.
Oh, you have a site?
Yeah, we
Okay.
have
It's in the works.
Okay. All right.
which would be next to Home Resource. So that site plan is developed off of 2 lots that are next to Home Resource.
Right adjacent.
Oh, okay.
And it's just ideal.
Yeah.
How could you do better than right next to Home
Yeah.
Resource?
Yeah.
Right, true.
And we're, just so everybody knows, and if you want to contribute at any point, that not just are we launching a capital campaign, but, so I don't just mean contribute financially, but the city of Missoula is getting closer and closer. They almost voted, and then they kind of went back to committee, and now it's going back to the council, but to award MUD a $96,000 contingency grant, which is an incredible thing for the purchase of that property. And and so the contingency is that we need to do some of the things we told them we would do, which is launch the capital campaign and start to acquire other sources of funding so that they feel comfortable kicking that in. But it's a huge amount of money, and it's the amount of money the city has right now in their CDBG allocation that they're thinking about and may contribute to moving those things. And then MUD would, like here, own the land, which makes so much possible. When you're not
You're starting
renting the land.
neutral instead of like digging for 20 years on a mortgage.
Yeah.
Right.
So I just wanted everybody to know that. And
Where's this chunk of land?
next to Home Resource.
Oh, okay,
So,
that chunk
and
of
we
land,
haven't, we haven't signed a contract on it or done anything, but we've been in communication with Rocky Mountain Development subsidiary Berkeley Corp, which owns the Home Resource site and also owns the adjacent land. So we're pretty excited. Yeah.
So would you like to look at each one of these, or is this just fine letting it rip and finding out more? I mean, do you guys,
I think we're
do you guys,
good.
do you guys, do you want?
We could do a last kind of comments round.
Right, well, we haven't talked about what do you want to feel like when you walk into the space, onto the land, onto the lots? What does everybody
Well,
want?
that was identified strictly the first two. They kept the straw bale, and then this one was completely different in that it formed a courtyard streetscape. So
Yeah.
it pulled everybody in
Right.
to that. There's the downside of that is that it starts eating up because this is
And shade, maybe?
none of these really deal with the scale of what it really takes to do a communal kitchen and enough space for dining and laundry and everything that we want can't be done right there. That's the size of the straw bale greenhouse. So if this is the concept, it's going to come out into here. And there's that. Do we eat up some of the urban agriculture to do that?
And maybe you acknowledge some of what we're hearing is going on in other parts of the country where the living spaces are smaller.
Right.
And then that could be accommodated.
And then if the living spaces stay up front here, then that communal can
And what I would
spread
suggest
out.
is, unless all of you are thinking about moving here, that you do grab 10 environmental study students who you've said are a potential good source and have them sit in a room, and maybe we use tape on the floor and we envision how much space they really could
Live
utilize. Yeah.
Built-ins would make all the difference.
Right.
If
Like,
you're
Yeah.
having to like
exactly, and that's what they do in other parts of the world.
Well, think about how they live on boats.
Exactly.
I think
And the other parts of the world. I mean, we're just
RVs are great designs
exactly. Right.
of compact living.
Yonto Evans has done a lot of work on how to make a small space seem really big. Are you familiar with this stuff? Yonto Evans, he's got a book on architecture.
I've actually seen that stuff.
Yeah.
Well, maybe it's a different guy, but I've seen some of. I have a friend who's a landscape architect too, and he's like, read this article.
It's amazing how you go into a space that's so small that I'm like ducking and turning sideways to go through the door, and yet you sit in it and it feels big. And so then once you get into this where you can be comfortable and feel, and plus it's a piece of art, you're like sitting in a piece of art, and it's like you're willing to give up, like, oh, my bedroom has to be as big as this room. You're willing to let that go when it's like, I am in a small, but it is a sculpted piece of art.
It's the function of these is so it's so highly tuned. It's like wow.
Well, I think the creativity,
just the detail is amazing.
See, now I kind of think it would be great to like have students come in. You talk about from the environmental studies. I think School of Architecture or something like that. And it's like, here's how can we get a small space to really sing? How can you have a room that is your 15 by 15 room sitting next to a 10 by 8 room? Now let's make the 10 by 8 room be of greater value than the 15 by 15 room. Like the rent on the two is the same. Which one do you want to rent? Oh, I want to rent the little one. That
Just
one
look at
is
this little stuff.
awesome.
Are these buildings as tall as they could be, depending on, according to the lot and the?
We didn't get to the third dimension in this phase yet.
But and he said they could go to 45, which is 3 stories, right?
45.
And we heard at the last ones, mostly with neighbors and stuff, that 3 stories would feel to them like
Hell
they
no.
were suddenly living.
But
next to
if it's cool,
Yeah.
they might just really like it.
Yeah,
That's
I
true.
could see.
One of
They
them
were
was,
transparent.
the other one
Yeah.
wasn't. Or
If you-
maybe the front isn't, but the
If
back
you
was.
Exactly, I was
stage
just
it
gonna say that
and
that
put
could tear it.
Single
Yeah.
story right at the
45.
street and
Yeah, we
come
talked
back
about
and
that.
build up. You can
Right.
get away with a lot.
Yeah.
But you don't want to overpower the neighborhood. I mean, this happened in Denver with the co-housing group that I started. The project got built, but they were monsters.
Yeah.
It was grotesque. It becomes a caricature, and it does not fit. It just overpowers the whole context of the neighborhood, and that's so important. I mean, then you have resentment issues. This happened in Cherry Creek, in Denver.
And that's what they were expressing at
Yeah.
the last charrette.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it happened
Because-
on my street over on Alder, where I have a house,
Right.
where, on East Alder, you guys are probably familiar with this, condos went up, and they went all the way up to the lines of the property,
Yeah.
and as high as they could go.
To the maximum.
And it just, for everyone that lived along there, or that walked along there to the
Yeah.
farmer's market, was just, people hated them.
Yeah.
But
People
ugly.
eventually bought them, but people hated them.
Yeah.
I
They're
wonder
kind of
about, like,
cool,
what this
but
design
they
is.
don't fit.
I wonder about if this design, for instance, as these trees grow, if the buildings could be built in such a way where a story could be added on.
When it becomes less of a,
As the neighborhood gets accustomed, as the
To buffer
trees
it.
start to, just kind of thinking that's the future too, because ideally,
If we utilize those shipping containers, just plop another one on there.
Yeah,
I
well,
could live in a
maybe.
shipping container.
But over time, one might realize that the people that are living there and with using hoon culture and other things, you found out that this little piece of property can actually feed more people than are here.
Than we thought,
I mean, heck, we have a booth now at Farmers Market. We could have more people live here, or something like that. I don't know.
it's a good point to make them, and I think this has come up before, creating structures that are adaptable. Because it's great if we think we're creating something that's really proactive now, but how are we going to make sure in 30 years Mud's not having another charrette where they say, we're going to have to tear down that building?
Yeah, they were
So,
thinking about this stuff. But I mean, it goes along with the movable wall idea. I mean, why not have the ceiling also become a floor in the future or whatever?
Well, this is how commercial buildings are typically done, is that the shell is a permanent structure,
Right.
but the interior is all done very temporary.
Right.
There's an architect named Ken Kern, and he published a book called The Owner-Built House back in about 1972. And he has a number of thoughts, and I don't know whether you can apply them to this, but one of them is build small initially, but design for your expansion. Never carry a mortgage. Only build what you can pay for cash out of pocket. You've saved half the life cost of the building, or the 30-year cost of the building.
Rob Roy has a book out that does exactly that, mortgage free.
Yeah.
It's really very good.
Yeah.
But I don't think that would fit.
Well, but in terms of limiting your financing or your fundraising, your capital cost immediately,
Stages.
stage it. Stage the whole thing. And always keep that in mind as one of your parameters as you're designing for possible expansion.
Well, and I'd say, sometimes when you think, some of us, it's easier for us to take on debt than others, or, mentally easier for us. Well, you get a board together and you have the same dynamic where some people think it's easier for the organization to take on debt than not. Or people are more willing to an organization to take it on because it's not actually their money.
Right,
and
right.
I think you're right. I mean, I think the same principle applies, that we build it when we have the money to build it. We stage it in such a way that goes with that.
And there's an extension of that, because what you're talking about here is terribly expensive to do. You can bankrupt yourself through sustainability. If you start incorporating every
That's exactly
strategy
why
possible.
we've done that, two
Yeah.
different sides.
Right, yeah.
This one, we have to find a grant that's probably
Right.
$800,000.
Yeah.
Just to
Yeah,
do
yeah.
that. This one, we're gonna do piece by piece like the neighborhood would do.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
And we've talked about how the other staging that we have to think about in terms of finances. I'm glad with this group that financing didn't come up immediately, because the first one when we asked people to dream big, they were all about, well, what's the cost, or how are we gonna, what can we do or not do here? So it's kind of cool that it hasn't come up till now. But is how can we renovate one building while keeping tenants over here, and then when we decide to demolish this building, have tenants be here now to help with the financing? That's a lot of stuff that the organization is thinking about and is going to have to think about as part of this project.
Right.
I think it'd be great to design an 8-bedroom structure here that came in at under 100,000 to be built. But then, we can now have a side thing that would be like the architecture and design that may have been much more significant than average. Well, anyway, using, a lot of materials from people who had trees brought down on their property, and then the trees were trucked over to here, and then we dried the trees there, and then started doing some roundwood structure stuff. That was what was in that barn that made the barn so amazing, is that they had huge timbers, and the door was actually probably a good foot thick. You had to grab hold of it and lean back to open the door, and it was solid wood. Just lots of little things like that just made it. So, but at $800,000, I can see with Living Machine, because when you were saying Living Machine, I was thinking, ka-ching!
Yeah.
Whereas part of what I'm thinking with MUD is to demonstrate to people, here is a solution. You went off and you built a house for $200,000. We built a house for $100,000, and we've got 8 people living in it.
Yeah.
And then let's also demonstrate how people say if you try and get to, because at the second charrette, somebody said, you try and get more than 2 families together, and if you ever try to do that, it just does not work. And I think it would be great to demonstrate one that does. And a lot of it is that we can go from the architectural aspect at this point in design and talk about how do we facilitate a community like that into working better from the design stage. We want to embrace it. I know you keep talking about 3 units here, and I keep thinking, and I keep pushing my agenda, 1 unit. But, so there I've been pushing.
1 unit with several.
Lots of bedrooms.
With 8 bedrooms. Right. You get much better urban density. And the thing to overcome is something that I would like to see MUD overcome, and that is 8 people living under 1 roof, with sharing 1 kitchen. And I think, there's other things that can be improved in that space. When I lived in a place in Seattle where it had 11 people under 1 roof, our food bill, all organic, was averaged $108 per month. and we just rotated the cooking. And whereas I think a lot of people in Missoula would be shocked at 108, especially when you add the organic tag to it, right?
Sounds like Becky's signing up too. I'm in now. I'm just joking.
Sounds great.
Well, I was a member of the Shoespalmer Ski Club in Denver, and we had a chalet up in Breckenridge, and it had beds for 36 people, and a big community kitchen, a big living space.
They only had to be there for a weekend, though.
That's just it. That is exactly it. It was too many people, too much intensity, not enough privacy to live in on a daily basis. Yeah, it's just way too much. And so I would be real reluctant even saying with 8. I mean, that's to me a big stretch. That's
So
a big
it's
stretch.
done. It is done. I mean,
Yeah.
and plus we have the example of the one I was talking about where it was shaped like a barn. They had 9 people there,
Yeah.
and for 3 years they had excellent success.
Yeah.
So no, granted, it's
And
riddled
then what
with
happened?
problems.
And then what happened?
Well,
Yeah.
I was there interviewing the gal that was exiting, but that's what I do. I did. That was a year where I was traveling all over,
Yeah.
visiting all kinds of intentional communities, and interviewing the people that were exiting.
Well, and I think it's also about this balance between, okay, I don't know if all of those people were individual or if they were family and it had the moving walls, but I mean, I think this question, it's a great question to continue with about how many people accommodate wanting to push that wall, making sure that people want to live there and a diversity of people want to live there. So it would be good to look at.
Right, and also if we have 15 people there, that's a lot to take on for an organization, rather than
manage.
yeah, to manage, and rather than 3 units and 2 units, and let's keep it to the urban density of that neighborhood. I'm all for density, and so I like your thought, and that's kind of why the single family is not going to be a single family, because single family should not be allowed anymore. That kind of development, we've got enough. There's enough out there. We don't need to.
Does MUD blaze a trail and innovate and demonstrate the future?
Right.
Oh,
Yeah.
you were at the second one, weren't you?
I was that obnoxious man saying that exact same thing before.
I remember from typing your notes.
I mean, I think that's a great question. Does MUD demonstrate what others have innovated, or does MUD demonstrate a new path? Does MUD blaze a trail, or does MUD show a trail that others have traveled?
No, we need to blaze the trail.
What was the or? What was the lesser?
Do you show do you demonstrate what other trails have been blazed?
Okay.
So or do you innovate? Do
Okay.
you lead? And that's we were talking about the problems with the fire stuff and the building codes and things like that. I mean, one of the issues that was brought up was like you could take it up with the board and work things out, and you were expressing that with this building even. And a lot of almost every concern imaginable can be mitigated by having an engineer sign off. Engineer came in, saw it, and said that problem doesn't exist here. Sign, you're good. Off you go. Have a nice day.
Well, that's why we want to get Missoula as a partnership and have jump in this together rather than try to sneak anything in there.
Yeah, no.
And
Yeah.
MUD has always been, I would say, a gateway for people. Like the people that come to the tool library don't necessarily come to it because they're wrapped up in the whole concept of living sustainably. They come to it because it makes sense. And the same with the truck share, and the same with a lot of the things we do. That it's a gateway for them to get interested in this kind of way of living and get further interested and further interested and further interested. And so I would say that I think that these buildings need to do that too. That like, it needs to not again be so deep into it. I think it does need to innovate, but it doesn't need to be so far beyond what people can link to their own lives. Like it needs to still have this gateway that says, even if you're not going to go and live with 8 other people, here are the things that you can do. And that's what MUD's always been great about, is this really positive sense of, here's what you can do. Here's what you can take back to your home right now and do and be a part of something. And then if you want to, you can push to the next level, and the next level, and the next level. And we'll try to give a gradation of that demonstration for people. And I think that that's really important to maintain. And I think that's what we're talking about, maintaining between this building and this building. And maybe this is the one that's like super, super, innovative, blazing a new trail. And this one's really showing people what we've known for 50 years or 100 years that you can live this way, but people still aren't, and so they still need that.
Yeah. With the 8 people under one roof, how many people are under one roof at one of the fraternities or sororities?
Absolutely.
How many,
God.
is it 20 or? It's 20 or
It
so.
varies.
Right?
It varies, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But how
So,
many
I mean,
adults will you live that way?
So you got Greek row, where you've got your whatever, your
Yeah.
Greek letter.
Really, really and truly, unless we are really seriously thinking about living there, we shouldn't be talking square footage. We shouldn't be, the people that you really think are going to live there are the ones we want to be asking. Square footage, soundproofness,
Right now,
right? Because it may be that you've got a huge population of people who want whatever.
Consider the people that are living at the buildings now, and how much they're paying for rent, and what size is their bedroom. And then we can get the same amount of rent if we had the same size of bedroom. And then I like the experiment of having a bedroom right next door that's half the square footage, same amount of rent, but somebody has gone into that room and made that room worth it. And I think now we're cooking with gas. We're demonstrating some serious urban density. Art Ludwig has an excellent article about how in the 50s, I think that the number of average square foot per person in the United States was about a third of what it is now. Which I think is really, he makes some points that I don't agree with, but.
When was that, a third?
I think it was in the 1950s. It was about a third of what it was now, of what it is now. The average family of, 4, I suppose.
It could have one bathroom.
In one way.
And you would have one bathroom. Now it's like, the idea of having fewer than 3 bathrooms is crazy.
Yeah.
You don't want to have the same bathroom as your kids. You don't want your guests to see your bathroom or the kids' bathroom. So, and then your kids, you don't want to give them a 10 by 10. They need room. So
Each one of them.
Each one of them. And I think it would be great to demonstrate comfort and happiness, and then talk about the eco footprint. If you're going from 1,000 square feet per person down to a total of maybe 200, wouldn't it be incredible to demonstrate 200? You think about it, on a ship, how many square feet do they have per person when the ship is full? I'm not talking about a cruise ship, but when people...
A working ship.
Yeah,
Sure.
the only thing I want to bring back in is that because I actually like the idea of it being like a mudternity or mud sorority, mudternity.
Mudternity, that's good.
But I do again want to go back to this idea of diversity of people living there, because when you talk about the military, or you talk about dorms, or you talk about a fraternity, and when people are living in those type of arrangements, it's usually not when they have children, or they have or they aren't single anymore, or long term. And so trying to again provide that balance where people feel like they're people can be drawn to it for those reasons, but they also feel comfortable enough to stay there.
Here's the building with the
com-
kids, and here's the building without the kids.
No, I completely disagree with what you're pushing.
Okay.
I would not ever live under that circumstance again, voluntarily, and I think it's the wrong path for this project to go down.
How come? Because longevity just doesn't.
Because it doesn't give you sufficient sanctuary and separateness, just having a bedroom in a space like that. I'm living in 300 square feet right now. I've lived back in Bozeman, I lived in a studio that was about 350. Quite nice. But I'm not willing to live in a space where I'm sharing with a bunch of other people and only have the sanctuary of a bedroom. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I think it's actually unreasonable to...
I agree with you. And so now let me paint a picture for you, if you will, and try it out. Let us suppose that you're in this house, but what you have is a room that is significantly larger. In fact, it's not just one room, it's two. You have a sitting room, and behind that you have your bedroom. In your sitting room you have a kitchenette. So you can have all the privacy of your space if you want.
But now you've changed the scenario from what I understood.
Oh, no, yeah, I am intentionally...
You have changed it completely.
I'm evolving it because I'm not...
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen, I don't know, several hundred designs for community shared spaces.
Yeah.
And this is a common thing that's done in nearly all communities. There are some rooms that are for the people that are over 30.
Yeah.
You're over 30, I bet. I would say. I'm over 30, I prefer a larger space, for a variety of reasons. And then at the same time, in the same community, there can be people where it's like, oh no, there's 3 of us guys, we're all cool with sharing one room. Everything I own in the world will fit in a backpack. And they're like, I'm all about cheap rent. I want the freedom that comes with cheap rent.
That's a great point. I currently have a house that I have roommates and I have struggle all the time. It's a matter of who they are, what their personal needs are, and how well those get along with what mine are, or clash with what mine are. How long they have to stay, how long we get along, So it's very hard to find the right roommate. And I know that the more roommates I try to put in there, the harder it gets. I might find one that I get along with, but then we get a third person in there and all of a sudden...
It only takes one problem.
Right, and I mean, I've got 1,500 feet of space to share. It's not like we're that crowded, really. I mean, everybody has their own bedroom, and they're all bigger than 10 by 10. I mean, gee.
Do you think part of that, because I know that they say this about like married couples, but also anybody that's living together, that the biggest arguments happen around the bathroom and the kitchen, right?
Food.
So the very things that we're telling people to share are the things that most often cause conflicts because you're, not just because they're shared, but because it's matters of cleanliness. It's a whole
habits
of things that happen.
I want to come in and do my thing. You left all your crap in my way, and I had to clean up your stuff. And you weren't even, couldn't reach you.
Right.
Yeah.
I would just add to that, I mean, as we kind of initially talked about this, and what I understood from Tim was that, we're kind of looking at residents as doing some common work, sharing some similar purpose and kind of living the vision of this site. So I think, if we are taking on that whole idea and that whole piece, we're going to kind of be looking at this living situation as also the social component, like how do you facilitate disputes if they arise, and kind of looking at structures for that too. And also I think common work can also kind of alleviate some of that roommate situation and stuff.
And actually, the roommates that worked were the ones that wanted to do what's going on there.
Right.
They like the garden and they want to help and the chickens,
Tim, you mentioned that there would be a director of this project on site that would effectively get free rent for directing. And so I imagine that part of that job would be to say, this person's not working out, this person seems to be the core of our conflict, I think we need to do a this person-ectomy.
Well, and it's part of why, I think you stay with more of the rental model because if people come in and 4 people bought this site and one person, it only takes one person to really foul a situation, so.
True.
That's a good, it's a good.
And so I guess the thing I'm hoping for is that there could be a demonstration of 8 people living under one roof to demonstrate the lower urban density and that it's possible for these people to get along. And so rather than, granted, we can find a million, maybe even a billion ways this will not work. And yet there are a few examples of this working. And so can we take that on? Do we want to say to people, you know what, we're going to bring you into an awkward situation. You're welcome to rent this room. It's got all kinds of awesomeness going on, which is obvious, and you're excited about mud, and you're part of a project. We need you to get along with all these other people, and if you can't, we're going to shoot you right out the door.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
this is.
fine at the beginning. But anyways, that's a detail that's going to be decided eventually, right? We're not
Right.
deciding that right now tonight, right?
No, we are not
Let's be
putting
clear on that.
bylaws down.
We were actually presuming that all of you are gonna move in, so.
All right,
The
so
plan here.
Can you live with it?
Well, I don't know, what time is it now?
6:20.
And did we say it would go till 6?
Yeah.
Well, then we have
We're done.
overstayed our welcome. Thank you. Anything else? Any last thoughts about what you're hearing that you want to make that you didn't get to say already?
I've said too much.
This was good.
I want to know when the possible expectation of beginning.
Yeah, what is the timeline?
That's a
Did you
great
tell-
point, because I think that to understand that helps you sort of pace it in your mind. So the first thing is moving the tool library and truck share. We imagine we're launching that capital campaign, and we imagine, I mean, if we can get sufficient support for it, then, you know, we see that as a year, maybe year and a half process of purchasing the property, building the buildings, moving stuff, and having it operational over there. And then this is the next phase, next step, once we do that. So I think, again, if funding comes in fast, we get $1 million donor, you know, stuff can move along faster. But I think that this, realistically, we're looking at 2 to 5 years, kind of in that time frame, to raise the funding and to start making these changes.
Because once that's done, then you have to regroup and get the funds and stuff for this.
Right.
Okay.
And this will, when people are approached for that, they know that this is part of what's in the works once that happens. So it'll
and you
snowball.
can, and all sorts of little things will happen as a result. Like, oh, we do want to plant that tree because it does go with our plan, and yeah, and we do want to lay down those pavers because it's going to lead to da da da.
And we anticipate that will also bring in more membership and more people that channel towards this project. So it's important that it's phased this way, but yeah, it's really important that you know that like 6 months from now, if mud doesn't look different,
Don't be surprised.
yeah, that it's
Okay.
part of a longer process. So.
We've been here 30 years. It might take 3 or 4 to get to that final step.
It's that next final step.
How big is
It's a living organism.
The board is 10, and we always welcome more interest in the board and on our committees. Like I said, all of our committees allow non-board members to take part in them if people want. So, yeah. And then we've got a whole cohort of volunteers. It's like 30 people that Ann wants me to see. So, thank you guys. Really appreciate it.